There is a certain kind of person who stays. Not because they are blind to what is happening. Not because they do not feel the pain. But because something inside them, something they cannot name and cannot explain, keeps pulling them back. Their friends watch from the outside and say, "Just leave." And they nod, and they stay. Most people think this is a love story gone wrong. But the truth is, what is happening inside that person's brain is not about love at all. It is about conditioning. A precise, systematic rewiring of the nervous system that makes leaving feel neurologically impossible, not emotionally difficult, but physically, biologically impossible. Today we are going to decode that process completely. And by the end, you will understand not just why you stayed, but why any person with a healthy, functioning brain would have done exactly the same thing. Carl Jung wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is what narcissistic abuse counts on. The unconscious. The parts of you that were shaped before you had the language to understand them. Today we bring them into the light. If you have ever felt more addicted to someone who hurt you than to anyone who treated you well, this video is for you. Stay until the end. The last part is the most important. Phase 1. Love bombing. The dopamine trap. There is a moment almost every survivor of narcissistic abuse can describe with perfect clarity. The beginning, not the arguments. Not the cold silences. Not the moments that made them question their own sanity. The beginning, when everything felt more right than anything had ever felt before. That feeling was not an accident. It was engineered. Psychology today describes love bombing as a deliberate pattern of overwhelming affection and attention deployed in the early stages of a relationship to create emotional dependency before the abuse begins. Constant messages. Unexpected gifts. A level of attention that felt like being seen completely for the first time. What this does to the brain is precise and measurable. Intense romantic experience triggers a significant release of dopamine, the brain's primary reward chemical, alongside oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and norepinephrine, which creates excitement and laser focus. In a healthy relationship, these chemicals build gradually as genuine trust develops over time. In love bombing, they are artificially compressed into days or weeks. The brain cannot distinguish between earned and engineered intimacy. It simply records, "This person equals the most powerful reward state I have ever experienced." That recording is the trap. Because once it is set, the next phase of the cycle does not push the victim away. It pulls them deeper. Phase 2. Devaluation. The erosion of self. The shift does not arrive like a storm. It arrives like weather in autumn. Gradual enough that you keep thinking it is temporary. That winter is not actually coming. That the warmth you felt in the beginning will return if you can just figure out what you did wrong. A comment that lands slightly off. A moment of coldness that vanishes before you can name it. A subtle withdrawal of the attention that has come to feel like oxygen. Then it escalates. The person who called you extraordinary begins to suggest, quietly and then loudly, that you are not enough. This is when gaslighting enters. Very well, Mind defines gaslighting as psychological manipulation that causes a person to question their own perception, memory, and sanity. You hear things like, "That never happened." "You are too sensitive." You are imagining things. No one else would put up with you. Over months, the cumulative effect is not simply confusion. It is something far more destructive. The internal compass, that quiet voice that says something is wrong, gets so consistently undermined that it stops being reliable. Not because it was ever incorrect, but because it has been told, again and again, by someone who speaks with total confidence, that it cannot be trusted. You stop trusting yourself. And the moment you stop trusting yourself, you become dependent on their version of reality. That is the real damage of devaluation. Not the insults. The silence of your own instincts. Phase 3. Intermittent Reinforcement. Why your brain cannot leave. This is the phase that almost no one explains correctly. And it is the one that matters most. Skinner was one of the 20th century's most important behavioral psychologists. In his research on reinforcement schedules, he discovered something that has since been confirmed across decades of science. Unpredictable rewards produce stronger, more compulsive, and more persistent responses than any other reinforcement pattern. Stronger than consistent kindness. Stronger than consistent cruelty. Stronger than anything predictable at all. The reason is neurological. When reward is consistent, the brain habituates to it. The dopamine response stabilizes and eventually diminishes. But when reward is unpredictable, when it could arrive at any moment or not arrive at all, the dopamine system enters a state of heightened, sustained activation. The pursuit intensifies. The compulsion to keep trying becomes overwhelming. This is the science of slot machines. And it is the science of why you cannot leave. The narcissist in the devaluation stage does not hurt you consistently. If every interaction were cold and painful, the brain's self-protective systems would eventually override the attachment and drive you toward the exit. Instead, cruelty followed by sudden warmth. Withdrawal followed by the most tender attention you have felt in months. A terrible fight resolved by a gesture that looks exactly like the person from the love bombing stage, the version your brain is still, at a neurological level, desperately trying to get back to. Each moment of warmth is a variable reward. And each variable reward resets the cycle. Research indexed on PubMed on romantic rejection and the brain's reward circuitry has shown that the neural pathways activated during this kind of relationship loss are the same pathways activated during substance craving. You are not addicted to the person. You are addicted to the cycle. Patrick Carnes, who developed the clinical framework of trauma bonding, identified intermittent reinforcement as the central mechanism that makes these bonds so resistant to rational intervention. The knowing does not reach the part of the brain driving the behavior. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung said, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Why leaving feels impossible. There are 3 reasons people cannot leave. And none of them are weakness. Trauma bonding. The intermittent reinforcement cycle has created a neurological attachment that operates independently of rational thought. Your nervous system has been conditioned to experience this person as relief from the very anxiety their absence creates. The anxiety of missing them is a withdrawal symptom. And returning temporarily resolves it, which is precisely the mechanism that keeps the cycle alive. Second, identity erosion. The sustained gaslighting of the devaluation stage has dismantled your ability to trust your own perception. By the time most people genuinely consider leaving, they no longer fully believe their own account of what has happened to them. The voice that says this is abuse has been so consistently undermined that it no longer carries enough authority to drive decisive action. The hope of return. The love bombing created a real memory, a genuine neurochemical experience of being loved completely. That memory does not disappear because the relationship became painful. It exists alongside the pain, as evidence that the capacity for what you felt in the beginning is real. And as long as any part of you believes the person from the love bombing stage might return, leaving does not feel like protecting yourself. It feels like abandoning hope. None of these are character defects. They are the documented, predictable psychological responses to a deliberate pattern of conditioning. The Gray Rock Method. A bridge out. The Gray Rock Method is a behavioral strategy increasingly discussed by therapists working with survivors of narcissistic abuse. The principle is simple. A gray rock is completely unremarkable. It provokes no curiosity. It offers nothing of interest. It simply exists, neutral and inert. You become the gray rock. In every unavoidable interaction, the goal is to be as emotionally unremarkable as possible. Not angry. Anger is supply. Not tearful. Tears are supply. Not hopeful. Hope is supply. Instead, brief, neutral, factual. Answer only what must be answered. Volunteer nothing personal. Engage nothing emotional. This works because narcissistic abuse runs entirely on emotional supply, your reaction, your pain, your love, your desperation. All of it feeds the cycle. Gray rock removes the fuel. In practice, one-sentence neutral answers. No explanations. No justifications. No attempts to make them understand. Logistics only, when interaction cannot be avoided. Gray rock is not the destination. It is the bridge, protecting you while you build the clarity and support to leave completely. One important caution. If there is any history of physical danger in the relationship, changing behavioral patterns can escalate risk. Please consult a professional before implementing any strategy. Safety before everything. The most terrifying thing. Jung also wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That is what this cycle takes from you. Not just your peace. Your relationship with yourself. Your ability to know what you feel, to trust what you experienced, to believe that your perception of reality is something you can rely on. Reclaiming that is not a single decision. It is slow. It is not linear. It will have setbacks. And it will require support, people who understand what trauma bonding actually does to a person, who will not tell you to simply move on as though the conditioning were a light switch. But it begins here. With naming the cycle. With understanding that the pull you feel toward this person is not evidence of love. It is evidence of a conditioning process designed to make you as difficult to leave as possible. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are someone whose nervous system was deliberately targeted, and who is now, by watching this video, beginning to make the unconscious conscious. That is not a small thing. That is where everything begins. Which phase of this cycle did you recognize most clearly in your own experience? Tell us in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Subscribe to Unmasked Psychology for more videos that decode the hidden patterns behind human behavior. See through every mask.